Hey everyone, in this super fun video, we're going to be doing a Halloween themed serving board, charcuterie board. Now, my brother actually asked me to make this. My brother is a lot like me. We're very, very into Halloween. And I don't mean like those little people that decorate a lot. I mean like, he got married on Halloween. Everybody that went to his wedding was in a Halloween costume. His wife just visited Salem in October for Halloween. Me personally, above this loft here, there's dead bodies. Not real ones, but if we could take a little quick tour up there, you would see that there's some pretty disturbing Halloween props for the big displays that we do. Anyway, my brother asked me to make a Halloween board because every year I make one for him that he can give away at his big Halloween party at his house, which is a whole other ordeal. What we're going to do is we're going to use our 24 by 12 eco mold. We don't even have these on our website, but these are very similar to our 24 by 12 by 1.5 inch or 24 by 12 by 2 inch silicone molds. It's just the eco style with the ribbed design and the super thick bottom and tops to lower the cost of silicone. But the same thing applies with any of our molds. I've got a funky piece of walnut here. I'm going to trim this down to 24 inches so it'll fit our mold. I'm going to take off the bark because you always want to take off the bark when you're putting wood in your mold, of course, because you don't want to have the resin bond to your bark. You want the resin to bond to the wood. And I'm going to do something extra special here, which is going to be cheating. I normally don't use a lot of fancy higher end tools when I'm doing these tutorial videos, but in this case, I'm going to be taking the wood to our lasers and I'm going to be engraving like a pattern, a mosaic of Halloween sort of designs, similar to like a Louis Vuitton bag, but you know, Halloween images. And then since I don't have a coffin template this size, I do have a smaller coffin template, I'm going to cut a coffin on our CNC. So I'm using some cheating tools today that most people don't have access to, but you can still appreciate some of the work that's gone into this video and some of this work that's gone into this piece. I hope you enjoy it. Let's get started. Okay, so I cut the wood, I sanded the wood, I planed the wood, and the only reason I ran it through the planer is because I wanted to get a little bit thinner so I wouldn't have to use as much as epoxy. I think it was almost 2 inches thick to begin with, and it's just excessive for a serving board. So it's about 1.5 inches, maybe a little under 1.5 inches right now after running it through the planer. I sanded it and I put it in our laser, and now after laser engraving it looks incredible with that cool texture on it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this on our mold, which I've already sprayed with the mold release. Again, it is super important to use mold release with our molds or really any other silicone molds because it will extend the life of your mold and prevent that epoxy from sticking. What I've also done is I've created a dam, and it's literally just a small piece of 1/8 inch thick plywood. You could use plastic, you could use acrylic, you could use cardboard. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to temporarily mount this, and I've got a little bit of a profile on it that kind of goes up with the live edge. I'm going to mount it in the center. I'm going to put down some tape just to hold it in place, and that's going to keep my colors separated because with this total thick set, if I just pour it side by side, it'll look cool for the first hour, but once those colors start mixing, you're going to have a heck of a different color in the middle and you're going to lose most of the intent here. So we want to keep the colors separated for a couple of hours until the resin starts to gel up a little bit. Once it's gelled up a little bit, we'll take the dam out, the resin will kind of combine a little bit more, and then we'll be fine. But that will keep the colors more or less separated. So I'm going to go ahead and switch the camera angle now. I'm going to mount my dam in here. I'm going to pour that total thick set in, and again, I'm using total thick set. It is really good for 1 inch. Total boat thick sets fathom is something that you'd want to use for a deeper pour. This is borderline. It is, 1 3/8 inches, almost 1.5 inches thick. It's quite a bit of volume there. I'm going to keep it cool in here, and I'm going to hope that you don't get any curling and bubbling because of the volume of the epoxy. Otherwise, I could have used Total Boat Thick Set Fathom and guaranteed a perfect result. So I'm kind of rolling the dice a little bit using Total Boat Thick Set because of that 1 inch kind of upper limit, but I think we'll be okay if we keep it cool enough in here. So I'm gonna go ahead and switch the camera angle and you can see this thing come together. Now also my intent with this is to actually only bring the resin up to maybe an 1/8 of an inch from the board, because if I go right up to the top, it's going to seep into some of my design, which I do not really want, because then I'll have to kind of pour it on the rest of the design. What I can do after is come back and top this entire thing up with clear. The clear will fill all of this in, because I'm planning on doing a flood coat to this anyway, because laser engraving and giving you all these little pits is not really ideal for a cutting board or a serving board. So you're gonna get all food and bacteria and stuff in here. So we really need to seal the entire thing up and top coat it with resin anyway. My little helper, do you wanna help me? Can you do the pouring? Do you wanna do the pouring on this side? Okay, you pour into that one, okay? Okay, you ready? Okay, right into that, but just gently. Okay, stop. Okay, just a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more.
Stop.
Okay, a little bit more, buddy. You can keep going. Perfect, thanks. I'm gonna get my weights to hold the wood down so it doesn't float up in the resin. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come back in about an hour or so, and I'll take the dam out and make sure that we're gonna get some mixing. Like this mixing's kind of okay. I just don't want the entire thing to be a completely different color. So this mixing, I mean, it would have been better to seal that up a little bit more. Not a big deal. It's still gonna look really, really good. So I'm back the next day. Now the thing I mentioned yesterday when I poured this about, rolling the dice using Total Boat Thick Set on such a deep pour, unfortunately did come true. However, in my case, it doesn't really make a difference. I just want to point it out though for your future reference, what can happen. You'll notice that this resin is a little bit bumpy. If you run your hand over it, it's kind of bumpy, and it kind of has this like loaf of bread type look where these sides curl in, and that's because of the heat. So you have a lot of heat generated because of the volume of that resin, which is why Total Boat Thick Sets is really for 1 inch at most pours. I thought I can get away with it, and I didn't. However, like I said, it's not going to matter because my original intent with this is to cover the entire thing in a clear layer, because I want to have all these little laser engravings filled in and a perfectly level surface. I'm not going to plane this. I'm only going to run it through the CNC to shape it. So in my case, it really isn't going to make a difference. Putting that clear layer down is going to basically take care of that issue, and no one's going to be the wiser except you watching this video. But just food for thought when you are doing projects like this yourself, to take the depth of the resin into consideration. All right, so I've got some more Total Boat Thick Set, and again, I'm probably pouring, in this case, maybe ½ an inch at most, so it's definitely okay. I'm not gonna put any more mold release on here because the resin won't bond, but simple enough, just pour it in, and I'll come back tomorrow, possibly the next day, and take it out of the mold, and we'll shape it and sand it up. Okay, we're back in the shop, and this guy, the top clear layer of this guy is all set up. So I'm gonna go ahead and demold it, and then we're gonna bring it over to our CNC machine and shape a coffin out of it. This is actually the machine I use for the small shop projects. We have some a bigger machine a couple buildings over that we use for like our production, like product making and stuff, but it's a little bit overkill. It's like a 5x10 machine, giant spindle, tool changer. For something like this, my basic Axiom AR16 with a single bit is going to work just as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and mount this down. It doesn't have a vacuum table. So I'm just gonna clamp it down, and then I will pull up our Vectric CNC program, draw out a coffin, and then I'll get the machine to cut it out. All right, so watching the video over the last couple minutes, you saw me sanding this thing up, chamfering the edges with like a 1/4 inch round over bit, and then just sanding. It probably only took a couple minutes on the video, but it was probably about 2 hours of sanding because I went all the way up to 4,000 grit here because I wanted to have some nice clarity on this resin and on this laser engraved surface, which is now top coated with resin. You may have also noticed that after I hit 320 grit, I wet sanded from there. So I didn't do any sort of plastic polishing. I could certainly have done that. I could have gone even higher. I could have got my 3-part plastic polish out. But once, first of all, it looks really good like this. But once I take my cutting board oil and go over the entire thing, so it's not just got resin here, I've got wood on the back, wood on the sides, right? So it makes sense to seal it with an oil. And that oil will make that resin pop as well. And that's pretty much it. I basically couldn't ask for anything more with this project. It turned out exactly what I wanted, with the only exception of this little tiny air bubble in this top layer of resin. So my hope is that once I put the oil on it, it'll more or less fill it in. Hope you enjoyed this. We're gonna go ahead and put this oil on now, and you can see the magic. This is just Howard cutting board oil. It's a food grade mineral oil, and you'll see instantaneously the clarity it brings to everything here. Move it around so I can get all the surfaces and every edge, and I'm going to let it set up for about 20 or 30 minutes to make sure it's fully absorbed into whatever it can find, all the wood pores and stuff. And then once that's done, I will come back and I will rub all the rest of it off and give it a hand buffing, and then I'll let it dry a little bit more from there, and then it will be finally done. And I'll be able to give it to my brother for his Halloween party. All right, guys, so what do you think? Leave your comment below. If you want to get one of our big maker molds for making things like this, head over to craftedelements.com. We've got a huge selection of rectangular molds as well as pre-shaped molds, so you don't even have to worry about cutting and forming, which is a very, very cool time-saving trick that we have here. All right, guys, thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one. Happy Halloween.